and talks. And the previous time me and Dad talked, outside of this, previous time me and Dad talked, I had worn the shirt. I wore the shirt. I posted a video about wearing the shirt, and Dad texts me like 4 days later because he saw it on Twitter. He saw the shirt on Twitter, and he's like, "How?" Like he goes on this large rant. How dare you treat me like this? How dare you disrespect me like this? At least the nanny is respectful. Full long text, and my
Wow.
response is, "Dad, the shirt is
Well, what does
hilarious and
that
it's a
mean?
joke."
Hey everyone, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. It's Friday, January 13th, 2023. Listen, there is a lot to talk about. It's TGIF. I'm back. My face is ready to see you. And let's talk about this interview that Paedon Brown had with John Yates a couple days ago. Listen, this interview was very impromptu. I don't believe it was planned. I think he just happened to be like watching and jumped into John's live. And so it kind of meandered and went all over the place. And it was like a very conversational interview. So there was topics in there that if you watched all the way through, you were like, whoa, I can't believe they're talking about this. He had a lot to say about Robin, about Mary, about his dad. He even had some criticism for some of his siblings, talking about some sibling rivalries and some disagreements. But a lot of it really did focus on his dad and the breakdown of the family. And yesterday we talked about what he had to say about Mary, which left a lot of you sort of like perplexed. Like some of you were like, this is really shocking to me. And others of you were like, you weren't surprised because you remembered what Maddie had said, or you just felt like this feeling about Mary when you watched the show. I went back in time and looked through like different episodes, and it's hard for me to know. I just know that there's a lot of people in this family that have said things about Mary where she's not deemed a very nice person, and everybody has a different opinion because some of the kids really liked her and other ones didn't. And sometimes people can have favorites, so they don't do anything to those favorites, and then they take things out on other kids. That could have been the case with Mary. Mary hasn't made a comment on it at this point. She hasn't really posted onto her Instagram since her statement about Cody. So this part of the video, or this section of the interview I'm going to talk to you about has to do with Cody really trying to pull a Jim Bob Duggar. So if you watched Counting On or followed the Duggars, my Duggar content, you know that Jim Bob is a controlling man that happens to used his contract with TLC to try to silence his children and really anyone that had anything negative to say about him. And some of the family members ended up in non-disclosure agreements where they were prohibited from speaking about anything related to the family that was disparaging. But that has not necessarily been the case with sister wives. And I guess Cody's trying to do this to his kids because he does not like what his kids are saying about him, because apparently his public image and what people think about him really matters to Cody because he's probably a narcissist. But Peyton discussed in his interview about how he really hasn't had much of a relationship with his dad in the last several years. And he talked about a conversation that he had after he had worn "What Does the Nanny Do" t-shirt, after he made a TikTok kind of laughing about it, and how his dad felt disrespected, which you saw in the beginning of this video. And after that, he expanded on some conversations that he had with his father, and it included him coming to this earth-shattering realization that what he thought and deemed was a reconnection with his dad was ultimately had nothing to do with that at all. And it was a manipulation tactic by his dad to get back in good favor so that the kids would stop speaking about him. So this is a lot to unpack because it's an intense part of this interview, and it's again an allegation, so we don't know. This is Peyton's side of the story. So before we get into this section of Kody Brown is trying to silence his kids like Jim Bob Duggar did, can you do me a big favor and give this video a thumbs up? Also, please subscribe to my channel if you have not yet subscribed by clicking the subscribe button down there. It is free. Make sure to hit the bell so that you can get notified of any time new content loads, and leave comments if you have something to say. Share the video with your friends if you feel so inclined. So the interview was a very long one. He took some rambling turns, and but the parts about Cody were pretty eye-opening. And when he started talking about the last time that he talked to his dad, he opened up about how he felt very positive after hearing from his father after not talking to him for a very long time, and then came to find out that it wasn't exactly what he thought it was after speaking to his mom. So we'll start with right here and we'll just sort of go through it.
What does
Check
that
this
mean?
out.
A lot of things. I was disrespectful by wearing the shirt. Yeah, I was disrespectful by saying the thing my mom said on television was funny. Yeah, that was the last time we had texted. And then we go months without texting. I don't remember the exact months, but like 7, 8 months without texting. And then he calls me randomly out of the blue and he has a conversation with me. And this is like an hour-long conversation, and it goes really, really well. I'm like, okay, you know what? I might be getting my father back. This is wonderful.
So I am trying to imagine Kody Brown being this sensitive to a joke that his wife made on the show because she said, "What does the nanny do?" And Paedon wore this out publicly. And Kody was like super sad about it or upset, calling him disrespectful. And so that fight causes the two of them not to speak for months and months and months. Imagine that. You know how Kody always says that the wives are like talking crap about him? Yeah. And it's like, you're on a show, dude. Like, what did you expect? It was great as long as they were singing your praises, but now that people are upset with you, then it's bad? I don't know. So they go months and months and months and they haven't talked, and then he finally talks to his dad and he hasn't heard from him, and they have an hour-long conversation. So you kind of have to like put yourself in his position at this point. He's probably feeling like super hopeful, like, oh, okay, I'm gonna get my dad back, because he feels like he's lost his dad since his dad made the decision to be with Robin all the time and her kids. And that's actually not why he called. It's horrible what he says his
It's
dad
wonderful.
did.
I then find out by mom the next day because I told mom, "Oh yeah, I talked to dad yesterday," and she's like, "What did he call about? Did he call about the argument we're having?" And I'm like, "Well, what's up with the argument you're having?" Apparently, he was trying to convince the not lawyers. Lawyers is the incorrect word in every single way, but I'm
Attorneys.
gonna say lawyers, not attorney, not no.
Sorry.
Attorneys is another word for lawyer. Lawyer
I
attorneys
know.
is
I'm
not
just
what they
throwing
are.
synonyms out there. Go ahead. Sorry.
You're totally good. This is not what they are, but like they're high ups in TLC and they're high ups in Puddle Monkey, and he's trying to discuss with them, trying to put it in our contracts that we are not allowed to say anything negative about him on our platforms. I'm not allowed to talk about anything negative with him on our platforms, and he's fighting with mom about it because mom is saying you can't control our children that way.
Okay, so he has a good conversation with Kody. Then he calls his mom, and his mom's like, "Oh, did he call to tell you about the fight that we're having?" Which is kind of like a loaded question because it almost like is a leading question where she can tell them about the fight they're having. So in that respect, I was like, well, that's kind of weird, Christine. But what she tells him is pretty stunning. So she says that Kody and her are fighting because Kody wants TLC's higher ups to make a contract for the kids that says they cannot speak negatively about him on their platforms, like at all. They can't speak about him. And apparently, this has to do with some of the kids now finally speaking out publicly about their dad and being critical of him. Prior to this, he was fine with them singing his praises, but now that things have blown up and he has a lot of negative publicity coming out, he doesn't want his kids to say anything bad about him. And he's trying to utilize the network against his family. So Christine is apparently standing up for her kids and saying you can't silence them that way. But if this is true, this reminds me of what Jim Bob Duggar did. And what's funny, though, is that Jim Bob was able to do this, but apparently, according to Hayden, that's not how TLC responded to Kody. So maybe he's not as well liked as we thought.
Way.
Check it out.
He's trying to say your children
So
can't
what
say
would
anything
happen
bad
if
about
you
me.
said something bad about, like, would he sue
It
you?
hurts his image. It hurts his image.
Oh, like if you're like, so you sign a contract and like you're saying,
TLC.
oh, Cody, my
TLC
dad's
would
not the
sue
greatest
me.
guy. So is he going to? Is your dad going to sue you because you spoke negatively
TLC.
about him in some way?
TLC would sue me. If I
God, Jesus.
TLC, 1 second. I'm still here.
So Kody, who is too afraid to like legally go against his kids, is going to utilize the network as a threat against his children to keep them silent so that his image is not hurt, so that the show can go on. And that in doing so, if they were to speak badly about him, about their own experience, by the way, not necessarily the truth of Kody's truth, as he would say, but their reality of growing up with Kody, if he doesn't like what they're saying, he's trying to utilize and weaponize the network against them, so that if they did sign a contract, TLC could sue them. Now, I'm familiar with one of the people that had to sign an NDA with the Duggars on the Counting On, and if I can recall correctly, I believe they had to sign an NDA, and TLC would sue them for $500,000 if they spoke poorly about the Duggars or Jim Bob Duggar at all, like good or bad. So can you imagine being so obsessed with your image, so obsessed with what people think about you, and so obsessed with this, like the show, to make sure the show can go on, that you'd threaten your kids from literally just telling their truth? Because Paedon hasn't been on the show in years. He hasn't been on the show. And Gwendolyn, in a recent video on her YouTube channel, said that she doesn't have a contract with the network. So if she doesn't have a contract with the network, if Paedon doesn't have a contract with the network, TLC has no legal control of them. Kody has a contract, but a contract is not between Kody. Unless the kids signed a contract legally, TLC cannot control them. So he's trying to get them to sign a contract. Can you imagine being that evil of a dad? Horrible. Just to speak your truth. That's not in line with the narrative that Kody wants to put out into the world, that he's a good, loving man. It gets worse.
I'm still here. I need to get my other headphone. So TLC would have legal ramification to sue me for speaking negatively about my father. TLC was like, I don't think we should do that. And my mom was fighting it. My mom was like fighting with us, like, no, you're not allowed to tell our children what they can and can't say about you. You have to earn their love back. And then it hit me. He called me for a very, very specific reason. He called Aspen and he called McKelty, and I believe he also called Isabel for the exact same reason. He doesn't want us talking negatively about him online.
So thankfully, the network doesn't agree to do this because they don't think this would be a good idea. It's weird, though, because they did this for Jim Bob Duggar. I don't know how they did it for Jim Bob, but they didn't do it for Kody. But anyways, and Christine obviously standing up for her kids is amazing. So he's trying to silence them. And he comes to find out that not only does his dad call him, but he calls Aspen, McKelty, and Isabel. All of Christine's kids, by the way. Every single one of them, Christine and his children. And has the same conversation with them. And it's not because they want to talk. It's because he's obsessed and worried that they're going to start speaking out about him, or if they already are speaking about him, he wants them to stop. So he calls them, and they think he's doing this to actually like bridge gaps and repair relationships, but it has nothing to do with that. The underlying motive for Kody is he's doing this to protect his own image. So he's trying to smooth the waters, not because he cares about them, but in the way that Paedon is suggesting, it's because his dad is trying to do this so that they'll stop talking about him, because they won't have anything bad to say about him, because his dad, they got attention from their dad, and everything's fine now. So the motive to speak to them is not, it's disingenuous, it's manipulative, and that's horrible. A lot of people say that Robin is manipulative, but I would say that's a pretty manipulative move by a father.
Online. He had roughly an hour-long conversation with 3 or 4 of his children.
And Aspen and McKelty are your full-blooded siblings.
Yes, right. They are all their mom's daughters.
No coincidence there. Go ahead. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, no, he happened to call us 3 after he was losing the battle with mom about what we are allowed to say online. He just happens to call us, and I realized he didn't call me because he wanted to talk to me. He called me because he doesn't want me talking negatively. Broke my heart again.
I'm so sorry.
So Kody loses the battle with the network because Christine fights back. And so in an effort to do more damage control, because he's losing that battle, then he calls all of his kids to try to smooth the waters with them. Not because he loves them, but because he thinks that if doing that, then the kids won't speak badly about him. Maybe if Kody actually would have spent the time and effort trying to have a relationship with his kids during the years that they were growing up and not abandoning them and putting another family first and, placing children above other children in a hierarchy and, punishing the children of Christine because he didn't like her and he didn't want to spend time with her. I mean, really, if you look at it, he didn't have to like Christine. They could have had a strained relationship, but he didn't have to punish the children. But he wants to spend his time with Robin, and that's where he wants to be. And so the kids aren't going to have one conversation with him and suddenly be like, okay, yeah, Dad, I love you. It took years to get to this place, and it would take years to get to a healthier place where the kids would actually trust him. And then how do you trust a father, if this is all true, that does this kind of stuff, that the only reason that he's doing this is because it's self-serving. It has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with him. Kody's losing in the court of public opinion. Kody's image is in the gutter. And his kids, by speaking out publicly, are actually reinforcing what viewers have seen on the show for years and saying, this is what happened. This is my experience. And Kody on his show has made it seem like he didn't do the things that Christine said he did, and that Christine is the one that planted these ideas in the kids. But as I've said repeatedly, you cannot plant an idea in a child if what they witness is a dad not spending time with them, and they witness a dad spending all of his time with his new wife, and a dad giving things and gifting things to children that just came into a family, and spending all of his time and energy there, making their mom the legal wife, getting the mom a huge house. I mean, you at some point realize that dad doesn't want to be here and dad picked a new family. Peyton said in this interview too, that it's not uncommon for husbands to have favorite wives. Mary was the favorite wife for years, and then Robin became the favorite wife. After Robin becomes the favorite wife, everything sort of falls out of order. And Paedon and Gwendolyn have very different experiences about how they think about polygamy. Paedon says that everything was great until Robin, and Gwendolyn's experience on her YouTube channel is that this whole system breeds dysfunction because you're all sharing a husband. And so there's a lot of unhappiness that happens in a world like this. So obviously, a lot of people are fighting for the attention of one person. And it's the children ultimately that become the collateral damage. There's been a lot of viewers kind of waking up now to the idea that okay, we are angry with Kody, but then you start to hear the kids' stories and you're like, wait a minute. How culpable are some of these women for going along with all of these lies on the show? Was it because they were feeling threatened and coerced by Kody and they felt like they had no other options? Or were they willing participants? It's hard to know because they all have benefited from the fame that they've received. And even after leaving, some of them will not leave the show, which is kind of frustrating. But obviously, this could continue to help them become more financially independent to stay away from him and not get sucked back in. It's such a complicated situation. So what I find most disgusting, though, is that it just further proves to me, at least, if this is true, that Kody doesn't care about anyone but himself. And it also proves to me that Kody is able to manipulate without Robin. And he's a manipulator in and of himself. And that he is showing himself to be a narcissist. And the kids are the ones that are being abused because of it. And that sucks. And I'm just glad that if Paedon, what he said is true, is that TLC said no, that at least TLC is learning their lesson for what they did with the Duggar situation. So what are your thoughts about this? Tell me in the comments below. Bye, guys.